The year 1971 is often cited as the pinnacle of the Kung Fu fever, but behind the bright lights of Golden Harvest and the burgeoning fame of a man named Bruce Lee, there were shadows. In March of that year, Bruce traveled to Tokyo, not as a movie star, but as a seeker. He was a man obsessed with the truth of combat, a man who famously said, "Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless." But in the heart of Japan, he was about to face a truth made of 3 feet of folded, razor-sharp steel. The Shinjuku Dojo of Master Takeshi Yamamoto was not a place for the faint of heart. This wasn't a commercial school with colorful belts and air conditioning. It was a hall of Kodyu, the old ways. Yamamoto was a direct lineage student of Gichin Funakoshi, the father of modern karate, yet he maintained a facility that felt more like the 19th century than the 20th. There were no trophies. There was only the smell of old wood, sweat, and the heavy weight of tradition. On March 8, 1971, Bruce Lee walked into this dojo. He was there to demonstrate his evolving philosophy, Jeet Kune. He expected skepticism. He was used to it. What he didn't expect was a challenge that would force him to gamble his life on his own theories. To understand the gravity of this day, we must look at the woman standing in the back of that room. Miyamoto Keiko was 28 years old, but her training had begun when she could barely walk. She was a 5th dan in kendo and iaido, but those numbers meant nothing compared to her bloodline. Her family had served the Tokugawa shogunate. Her great-great-grandfather was a samurai who had survived the Boshin War. The katana she carried wasn't a wall hanger or a dull practice sword. It was a shinken, a living sword. It had been forged with a specific purpose, to end life with a single, elegant stroke. Keiko didn't view martial arts as a sport or a path to Hollywood. To her, it was a sacred preservation of Japanese soul, and she saw Bruce Lee, with his shirtless bravado and his hybrid Chinese-American methods, as a direct insult to that soul. Bruce began his demonstration. For those who have only seen him in Enter the Dragon, seeing him work in person was a different experience. He was a blur of efficiency. He worked the wooden dummy, Mukyan Jong, with a rhythm that sounded like a heartbeat. He spoke about the economy of motion, the idea that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and the fastest way to end a fight is to be where the opponent isn't. As Bruce spoke, Keiko's disapproval grew. She saw his speed as a parlor trick. In the world of the samurai, speed is secondary to ma'ai, the critical distance. If you are 1 inch too close to a sword, you are dead. If you're 1 inch too far, you are useless. She believed Bruce's modern style relied on the assumption that the opponent wouldn't be holding a weapon that could take a limb with a glancing blow. When Bruce finished, the air in the dojo was electric. Master Yamamoto moved to thank him, but Keiko stepped forward. The 30 students present, all advanced black belts, held their breath. "Mr. Lee," she began. Her Japanese was formal, cold, and precise. "You speak of efficiency against pads and wooden logs, but traditional arts were not forged in a gymnasium. They were forged on battlefields where the air was filled with steel. Your methods are a dance. They lack the weight of reality." Bruce, always the philosopher, didn't take offense. He smiled, that famous half grin, and replied that the human body has limitations regardless of what it's holding. A sword doesn't change the way a shoulder moves, it only changes the consequence of a mistake. Keiko reached for her sword stand. "Then let us test the consequence. If your principles are universal, prove they work against my family's blade. If you cannot disarm me, you must admit that your way is merely a hobby, not a martial art." The room went cold. Master Yamamoto tried to intervene, knowing the legal and physical disaster this could become, but Bruce raised a hand. He saw in Keiko's eyes the same fire he had. She wasn't a bully, she was a believer. Bruce set 3 conditions. 1, the blade must be real and sharp. He wanted no excuses. 2, the attacks must be live. She must try to hit him. 3, a 3-minute time limit. Bruce removed his shoes. He stood on the polished wood, barefoot. He was unarmed, wearing only his training trousers. He was facing a master of a weapon that had a 40-inch reach advantage. This wasn't a sparring match, it was a laboratory of death. Master Yamamoto gave the command, Hajime. Keiko didn't rush. She moved in a slow gliding walk known as suriashi. The tip of her katana was leveled at Bruce's throat. This is the Chudan stance, the most versatile position in kenjutsu. It creates a sphere of death around the swordsman. Bruce didn't stay static. He utilized his fencing footwork, circling laterally. He was looking for the tell, the slight tightening of the grip, or the shift in the lead hip that precedes a strike. Keiko saw an opening, or what she thought was one. She launched a men's strike. In kendo, this is a strike to the top of the head. When executed with a real katana, it doesn't just hit the head, it cleaves the body to the sternum. The sound of the sword cutting the air was described by witnesses as a sharp whistle. Bruce did the unthinkable. Most people, when faced with a blade falling, jump backward. But jumping backward is a trap. A skilled swordsman will simply follow through and catch you in mid-retreat. Instead, Bruce utilized the intercepting principle of Jeet Do. He stepped forward and left. He entered the blind spot of the arc. The blade missed his shoulder by less than 2 inches. Before Keiko could reset, Bruce's hand flashed out. Not a punch, but a paksal, slapping hand. He struck her lead wrist. This wasn't meant to break the wrist, but to ruin her line of the sword. By touching the wrist at the moment of peak extension, he ruined her leverage. For a heartbeat, they were chest to chest. Keiko felt the heat coming off him, but she was a master. She used Tai Sabaki, body rotation, to spin out of his reach and re-establish the gap. The students watching were gasping. They had seen Bruce move before, but seeing him dance with a live blade was a different experience. It was like watching someone play with high-voltage wires. Keiko was no longer skeptical. She was focused. She realized Bruce wasn't lucky, he was calculating. She changed her strategy. She went from the big movements of battlefield kenjutsu to the tight movements of dueling. She lowered the blade. She was going for the legs or the midsection. 90 seconds had passed. The sweat was pouring down Keiko's face, but Bruce looked like he was in a trance. This is what he called the art of fighting without fighting. He was becoming water. If she was the container, he flowed into her gaps. Keiko lunged with Itsuki, a direct thrust to the solar plexus. This is the most dangerous move for an unarmed fighter to face. There is no arc to sidestep. It is a straight line of steel. Bruce utilized a Wing Chun double hand technique, a Tan Sao and Bong Sao combination. He didn't try to grab the blade, which would be suicide. He used the back of his forearms to guide the flat side of the sword past his ribs. It was a move of incredible bravery. If his timing was off by a millisecond, the edge of the blade would have sliced through his arm down to the bone. As the blade slid past him, Bruce didn't punch. He knew a punch would leave him vulnerable to a secondary cut. Instead, he stayed stuck to her arms, the principle of Chi Sao, sticky hands. By keeping physical contact with her limbs, he could feel where the sword was going before she even moved it. Frustrated, Keiko pulled back and unleashed a kesagiri, a diagonal slash. This was her fastest move. Bruce miscalculated slightly. He dropped low, but the tip of the blade caught the very ends of his hair. The students in the front row later said they saw the hair float to the floor. Bruce didn't panic. He used that low position to execute a sweep. He wasn't trying to knock her down yet. He was testing her root. Keiko hopped over the sweep, showing her own incredible athleticism. They were both breathing hard now. The dance was becoming a war of attrition. There were 30 seconds left on the clock. Keiko knew she had to finish it. She gathered all her energy for a final, decisive sequence. She feinted high, hoping to draw Bruce's hands up, then intended to drop low and take his lead leg. It was a classic samurai trap, but Bruce Lee was a student of deception. He didn't bite on the high feint. Instead of moving his hands, he moved his entire body. As Keiko dropped for the leg cut, Bruce launched a Bu Sao, a finger thrust strike, directly at the Hegu pressure point on the back of her hand. The impact was like a hammer blow to a nerve. Keiko's grip involuntarily loosened. It's a physiological reflex. The brain shuts down the hand to protect it from perceived trauma. In that microsecond of weakness, Bruce didn't grab the sword, he grabbed her wrist and her elbow. He used his hip as a fulcrum. This is a chin-na technique, the Chinese art of seizing and locking. He turned his body, using Keiko's own momentum against her. Because she refused to let go of the family heirloom, her body had to follow the sword. She was flipped over his hip. As she hit the floor, Bruce maintained the wrist lock. The mechanical pressure on her radius and ulna was too much. Her hand opened, and the 6th-generation-old katana fell to the floor with a hollow clang. Bruce immediately released the lock. He didn't stand over her. He didn't celebrate. He stepped back 3 paces and bowed deeply. The dojo was so quiet you could hear the distant traffic of Tokyo. Master Yamamoto stood up, his face pale. He had just watched a man defeat the invincible weapon with nothing but his bare hands and a